On Air Canada to get any. I only get like the
Over
crackers and stuff.
100,000 miles they let you eat.
Esperanza.
Good morning.
On Air Canada.
Hi, I'm the Executive Director of the New York chapter of the Recording Academy. My name is Elizabeth Healy. Thank you for coming today to 50 years of great Grammy recordings. We have a wonderful group of people up here to talk with you today and to talk about 50 years of recording. But before we do that, I just want to talk a little bit about the Academy. The Academy is a national organization. We have 12 chapters, and one of the chapters is the New York chapter, and Toronto is within the region of the New York chapter. Actually, all of Ontario and Quebec are part of the region for New York chapter. So that is why I am here. And let me tell you a little bit about the Academy. As I said, it's a membership organization. And we have 3 levels of membership. They're voting members, associate members, and now we have Grammy U members, which is a new program that started last year, which is geared toward college students. And those of you who are members, it's great to see you. Those of you who are not, we put some brochures on the chairs for you so you can check out what we're about. You can also go look at www.grammy.com. And we'd love to have you join us in the Academy. It's open to many different peoples in the business, whether they be songwriters or musicians or producers or engineers or publishers or music therapists. We have the whole gamut of people in the business. So we would love to be able to welcome you as well. One of the areas that we have, as I just mentioned, are the producers and engineers, and that's a large group of our members. And we have, because it's such a large group, we have an area called the Producers and Engineers Wing. And what I would like to do is introduce you to Maureen Droney, who's the Executive Director of the P&E Wing, as we call it. And she'll tell you a little bit about that division of the Academy, and then we'll get started with the panel. So welcome, and thanks for coming.
Like Elizabeth said, I'm the Executive Director of the Producers and Engineers Wing. We have over 6,000 members, so we're a third of the Recording Academy's membership and half of the voting membership, actually. And our mission is to work on issues that are of importance to producers and engineers, the people behind the scenes who spend their lives making music sound great. We work on things like technical recommendations, educating about the importance of music in the schools, and advocacy for new streams of income for the people who make music. For instance, something very important we're working on right now is a bill that's just been introduced in Congress called the Performance Rights Act in the U.S. Congress, the Performance Rights Act, which, if it gets passed, will correct a big injustice of the United States where artists are not paid for their work when it's played on over-the-air radio. So we work on important things like that. We also work very hard to educate people about the importance of the art and craft of recording. And you can find out more about us if you want to by going to producersengineers.com, or you can find us on Grammy.com. So, as the director of the Producer and Engineers Wing, I know how important it is for us to support jazz and jazz education, because the foundation of jazz is great live performances and the recordings of those performances. Many of our greatest producers and engineers got their start in jazz, and they love to work in this genre because they really get to use their skills to capture those magic moments that make up great performances, and to make them sound the absolute best that they can. And that's what we're going to talk about here today with this great panel of personalities. Now it's my pleasure to introduce our moderator, who lives in Chicago and who has written about and evangelized jazz for over 35 years. He's been jazz critic for the Chicago Reader for over 30 years. He was Playboy's jazz critic for 9 years, and he's the author of the influential Playboy Guide to Jazz. He was also USA Today's very first jazz critic for the Chicago Sun-Times, and a columnist for Jazz magazine. He's hosted many radio programs about jazz, and he's also a distinguished and award-winning liner notes writer for over 225 albums. This busy Renaissance man is also known for his arts commentaries on NPR. He's a former adjunct professor in jazz history at Northwestern University and a charter member of the programming committee for the Chicago Jazz Festival. And in addition to all of that, he has a very demanding and busy volunteer job as vice chairman of the Recording Academy, the Grammys Board of Trustees. So please welcome today's guide on our journey into jazz recording history, Neil Tesser.
Thank you. Thank you.
impressive.
I don't know who she was talking about, but he sounds great. Today we are going to talk about, as the poster says, 50 years of great jazz recording. And the reason that we've picked 50 is because this is the 50th anniversary of the Recording Academy. The Grammys come up in about 4 weeks on TV, and that will be the 50th anniversary celebration of the founding of the National Academy of Recording Arts and Sciences. And right there in the title is an important clue as to what we're doing today. It's Recording Arts and Sciences. And nowhere does art and science come together to a greater degree in the music industry than on the other side of the glass from where the players are, the engineers. So we're going to talk about how the history of jazz recording has changed in terms of techniques and in terms of approach and ethos over the last 50 years. And hopefully we will also talk about how some of those changes have affected not only the way the music is made, but the way those of us who just buy the albums or download the music get to hear it, and how it affects what we really think of the music. I don't think engineering always factors into decisions for music lovers, and perhaps after today it will a little more regularly. On the panel, let me briefly introduce the folks we have here. These two guys, Al Schmitt and Phil Ramone, together comprise about 2,000 years of recording recording history. Actually, the last 50 years of recording, you can't look at a history of that and not come across these names on a regular basis. Al Schmitt has won 16 Grammy Awards as an engineer, 2 Latin Grammy Awards as an engineer. He started his career in the 1950s, and we're going to listen to one of his very first recordings in just a little bit. He studied with the legendary engineer Tom Dowd, who many of you know about from the fine documentary that was done about his work several years ago. Al was an engineer, then he became a producer, produced a Jefferson Airplanes album, and several others in the 60s, then went back to engineering, and these days is so busy with people like Al Jarreau, Diana Krall, Joe Sample, worked on the Ray Charles albums at the end of his career, worked with Frank Sinatra, Anita Baker. The list goes, as they say, on and on and on. A 1997 inductee into the Technical Excellence and Creativity Awards Hall of Fame, and a member of the Board of Governors, former trustee of the Los Angeles chapter of the Recording Academy, Al Schmitt. Let me skip over my friend Kurt Elling for just a moment to talk about Phil Ramone, who has only won 10 Grammy Awards, but he has an Emmy, so it kind of balances it out. And who is renowned for his work as an engineer and producer with folks like Barbra Streisand, Billy Joel. By the way, the first CD ever pressed, I learned today, was Billy Joel's 52nd Street, which was produced by Phil Ramone. Paul Simon, Bob Dylan, Burt Bacharach, Paul McCartney, etc. Phil has also worked as an audio engineer and or producer of Broadway cast albums, television specials, including the Grammy Awards, has worked on a variety of other live music presentations and live presentations beyond music, including the giant commemoration of 9/11 a couple of years ago in New York. And pretty much pioneered the idea of using fiber optics to record tracks in real time in different places, as on the Frank Sinatra Duets album. Phil is also a former chairman of the Board of Trustees of the Recording Academy and also of its Producers and Engineers Wing, and currently a trustee of the Music Cares Foundation. Mr. Ramone. In between these two guys, I've asked Kurt Elling to sit as a buffer, because once Phil and Al get started, yeah. And Kurt can take it. Kurt is a 7-time Grammy nominee for 6 Blue Note albums and his latest on the Concord label called Night Moves. Regular winner of Downbeat Critics and Jazz Times Readers Polls, won 3 Jazz Journalists Association Awards for Best Male Vocalist, and the Prix Billie Holiday from the Académie du Jazz in Paris. Composer, lyricist.
I got a certificate with that one.
Composer, lyricist, and vocalist, and also someone who has recorded, in addition to his own albums, shut up. In addition to his own albums, he's recorded with people like Terence Blanchard and Dave Brubeck and John Hendricks and Charlie Hunter and the Yellow Jackets. and was artist in residence at last year's Monterey Jazz Festival, a man for all seasons, Kurt Elling. We're also lucky enough that Esperanza Spalding could change her schedule to join us today. Started playing bass at 15 and quite rapidly became what would be known as a child prodigy. Originally from Portland, Oregon, but Esperanza is now teaching at the Berklee College of Music to students who are barely younger than she is, which isn't bad for a high school dropout when you think about it. Yeah. You've been performing with Joe Lovano and singer Patty Austin. I should point out that in addition to playing the bass, Esperanza Spalding is also a very talented singer who has one album so far under her own name and is going to be leading or making a debut as a leader of the group Junjo, which is a trio, right, for the Ava music label, which is based in Spain. Esperanza Spalding.
I love Esperanza.
And finally, Randy Brecker, trumpeter, flugelhornist, recording artist on literally hundreds of albums, ranging from his work with Horace Silver in the 1960s and George Benson, Jaco Pastorius' big band, Chaka Khan, Frank Zappa, James Taylor, on and on. Started out really with Blood, Sweat, and Tears before working with the group Dreams, which many people remember as a very influential, if lesser known, jazz fusion group of the early 1970s. And then, of course, formed the band with his late brother Michael Brecker, the Brecker Brothers Band, which won awards back in the 70s, and then again in the 90s when they put together a kind of historic reunion album. Randy has won two Grammys under his own name, in addition to the Brecker Brothers Grammys. One was the album called Into the Sun from a decade ago, and then just last year with the WDR Big Band featuring Michael Brecker as a guest soloist, another Grammy came to Randy Brecker, who I have always felt is one of the great and most influential trumpeters of the last 45 years. Randy Brecker.
Thank you.
So let's start out by listening to the oldest recording that I could find that anybody on this panel worked on. And I have to take Al Schmitt's word for it that you engineered this album, because back in the 1950s, engineers were not named on the recordings.
No, not at all. We were second cousins, something. Only some jazz records labels started putting the names of engineers and what microphones, and even in some cases a setup.
Yeah, a little diagram of how the microphone was set
diagram
up.
of how it was set up. But in most cases, I think the first time my name got on an album was I did the Peter Gunn album with Henry Mancini. I think that's the first time I saw my name in print. Yeah, I did this album. I was doing a lot of work in the 50s with for World Pacific Jazz, and I did this Jerry Mulligan Songbook album with all the great saxophone players of that time. And then right after that, I did an album with Jerry Mulligan and Chet Baker called Reunion. And I did another album called Street Swingers with Bobby Brookmeyer and Jim Hall. And Dick Bach, who owned the record company, would fly in to use me all the time. And
This was in New York.
in New York, yeah. At a studio called, at that time it was called, it was Full Recording, and then, then it became Coastal.